Shabbat shalom. It's good to see you.
Okay,
We can walk back together if you'd like.
sounds good, sounds good. Doing a new reading for several weeks hence.
You ready? What?
Doing a new reading for several weeks hence. I was working at nervous seeing that I have throat pain at printout. What are you reading today?
Well, 70% there.
Okay. Ella, Shabbat Shalom. How are you? Good to see you.
You were really rocking and rolling with the Dodo Lam the other day, Ella.
Ella,
You were doing a great job.
how are you? Good to see you. Hi, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Right. The way she comes in and gets right down to business. She said, I'm not gonna miss a beat with my book, I gotta get through them before the end of Shabbat.
She went over to a friend's house yesterday, borrowed a book during the play date. They sat there and read, and then she finished the book last night. We gotta bring it back. Yeah, it was really quick. We gotta bring it back to her. I guess her friend trusted you to read it quickly.
She said she does it all the time.
Nice to have a regular to read too.
You have to assume that when you load something book, you're going to see it. You have to assume that, unless you're very persistent. Unless you know the person is reliable. Pretty reliable person.
Yeah.
Well, always make it big. Tres más.
Yeah, we're getting there. Okay. Where were we? I'm like losing track of my Parsha cycle.
Shmini.
I hope it's Shmini.
Yeah.
That's what you're gonna hear. So.
No, I know it's Shmini because we're working on Hamalo for next weekend, which we haven't done in forever, which is Shmini. So it definitely is.
It's gonna be next week.
What's that?
Hamalo is good.
Hamalo next weekend.
I think we done.
I'm very excited for it. It's been a very long time. Yes, it's definitely Shmini. I know it's Shmini because we're working on Hamalo for next weekend, which we haven't done in forever, which is Shmini. So
Dial's on our way too.
Hamalo
Dial there.
next weekend.
Yeah, I just didn't hear.
Very excited for it. It's been a very long time.
Oh,
We're hearing a loop back, which means that they've got something playing on there. I'll get them to fix it. It's fine. Shmini is on. I'll get them to fix it.
We have more.
Tell me.
I want to have a say when I'm doing it here.
I was gonna say, tell me about it.
Okay.
for a second day. Funny.
This is easier to follow, but this is the one that they announced the date. But it's pretty straightforward.
Not much flipping around as there's love showing.
Okay.
That's true.
Absolutely.
We're gonna have page announcements and the other one.
I will suffer with my choice.
Exactly. You want to lead, Ellen?
Sure.
Great.
When we count the Uber, we'll announce the page for that, it goes on Zoom, and the other page is your email.
Oh, great. Okay, so Mari. Okay, who is it for? In just a moment, we'll begin on 214 in the Lev Shalem Siddur. Great. Okay, so Mari.
226 is Slim Shalom, 558 Seam Shalom.
Yes, 226 or 558 in our other Siddurim. In just a moment, we'll begin on 214 in the Lev Shalem Siddur. I told him that. I know. You know what's happening. He's gonna fix it.
Aren't you kind of Billy Min? I need you to announce the page. I might be one. 226.
226.
Slim Shalom.
Alan, will you try speaking and see if it's still happening?
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3.
Step testing 1, 2, 3. Sounds good. Was that long?
Here's that long for you.
Yeah, that's really weird.
That was like a 30-second delay. I think we're good. Yeah, okay. I think we're almost in. Exactly. Okay. We exactly okay, great. It seems like we're good. So we'll begin the Minha service, and Alan's going to start. Again, we're page 214 in this room.
Ashrei Ashrei Beitecha Odihalu Chasela Shagalo Ashrem Sharonai Elav Tila David. Tilana Yidabepi, Vivarecha Basasha Kochalelam Paed, Vanachrach Yam, Etav Yadalam, Hallelujah, Uvalitzion Goel. V'yatakadosh Shifti Yisrael, V'karazel Zeve'amar, Kadosh, 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 Anatzva B'lochala Aretz Vodo. V'atisa Eni Ruach V'shmacha V'karash Gadol, V'kevod Adonai Mimkomo. Adonai Yimloch Le'olam Va'ed. Titen emet leYaakov, chesed l'Avraham, asher nishbata l'avotenu mimekedem. V'yivdechu v'chayodei shemecha, ki lo azavta doshecha Adonai. Adonai chavetz l'man tzidko, yagdil Torah v'yadir. Yitkada v'yitkada shemei Rabba Belvadi v'kirute v'amlich v'chute b'chayechon u'vyomechon U'v'chayedecho be'Yisrael b'gala b'zman kaviv imu amen Yehi shmei Rabba mevarach l'elav v'lo maya Yitparach v'yishtabach v'yitpar v'yitma v'yitnaseh v'yitadar v'yidaleh v'yidalash v'yidakudasha b'richu Le'ela minko b'yachata v'shirata tushmata v'nechamata dameron be'alma v'imu amen V'ani tfilati lech Adonai et ratzon Elohim v'rav chastecha aneni be'emet yishecha Vayehi bin Zoharon, Vayomer Moshe, Kum Adonai v'yafut zohevecha, v'yanusim esanecha mipanecha, ki mitzion tetzei Torah, udvar Adonai mirushalayim, Baruch shnatan Torah le'amo Yisrael, b'kedushato. Gadlul Adonai tiru mashemo yachtav
Yishakavu lehar kocho, Yikadosh, Adonai Eloheinu.
This is the right way. Yeah, it should be. Except you're stuck. Oh, there you go.
You're gonna have to roll it just a bit.
Got it. Oh.
In just a moment, we're going to be in Parshat Shmini, which is on page 630, and chapter 9 of Leviticus, of the Parshat of the book of Vayikra. Great. Okay. Vitigale, viterae, malchutolinu isman karov, yechompletetinu, fletato mobich selechinu chasrachim ratzomino marhamein, hakol, havugot, deleluhinu chnuchavot la Torah, tamod, michavat Avraham, yamod. Netam ben Shlomo, lali arishona baruch shantan Torah lilim ho Yisrael biktushato. Itamad bekim adonai lechem, chayim kulechem hayom. Baruch et Adonai hambarach. Baruch Adonai hambarach le'olam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher baruch banu mikol hamim. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayihi bayom hashmini karam Shel Aaron ubanav uziknei Yisrael. Yomer Aaron kalchacha egel ben bakar lachatat ayol lahat mimim Ba'akreiv lifnei Adonai vel b'nei Yisrael tidaber lemor kechu sirizim lechatat ve'egel b'keves b'nei shana v'mihim lo laha v'shor ba'ayil ishlamim lizbach lifnei Adonai u'mincha hablulav Hashemen ki hayom Adonai nira lechem v'yichu et asher tzivah Moshe el pnei ohel moed Vayikrevu kol ha'ida v'yamdu lifnei Adonai Hayomer Moshe zeh adavar asher tzivah Adonai ta'asu v'yara lechem kevod Adonai.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Amen. Yamod
Lev Chaim Yehuda,
Lev Chaim Yehuda
Ben Yitzchak v'Chiena.
Ben Yitzchak v'Chiena Dalia Hashniya.
Page 630, verse 7, last line.
Baruch Adonai Barach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai Barach Ilam V'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'chabana mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Vayomer Moshe el Aaron Rav el hamizbeach v'aseh et hachatat v'et olatecha v'chaper v'adechahu v'ad ha'am v'aseh et korban ha'am v'chaper v'adam kasher tzivah Adonai v'yakrev Aharon v'yikrav Aharon al mizbeach v'yishchat el egel hachatat asher lo vayakrivu b'nei Aharon et adam elav vayipol etzba'o b'adam vayiten al karnot hamizbeach et hadam yitzhak el yisod el yatzak et hadam hayatzak el yisod et hamizbeach v'et hachelevat hakalyot v'et hayoteret min hakaved min hachatat hiktir hamizbecha kasher tzivah Adonai et Moshe v'et habasar v'et haor sarap ba'esh michutz l'machaneh vayishchat et ha'olah vayimtzihu b'nei Aaron elav et hadam Vayizrekehu al hamizbeach saviv v'et ha'olah et hamitzihu elav lenitchachecha v'et harosh vayikter al hamizbeach vayirchatz et hakarev et hakrayim vayikter al ha'olah hamizbecha Vayakrev et karnot ha'am et karban ha'am vayikach et seir hachatat asher la'am vayishchatehu vayitchaehu karishon vayakrev et ha'olah v'aseh kamishpat vayakmishpat.
Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch Atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yamod. Meir ben Eliezer Lai Bechana, Lalia Hashlishi.
632, verse 17.
I think I went way over.
It's okay. It gives you a second chance at it.
Okay, good. So let me figure out where it is.
Yeah, it seemed long.
Yeah, it was long.
Very long. It's very strange.
Right. I just kept going. Metabasar is where it starts.
Very good. It's page 631, verse 11.
I gotta find it.
Yeah.
Let's see.
This was one.
Yeah.
This was two
Mhm.
down here. So it's going to be somewhere around here. Ah, there it is.
Yeah, that's a- there you go.
Okay.
Baruch hu et Adonai hamivorach. Baruch Adonai hamivorach leolam va'ed. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Betabasar bet haor saraf ba'ish michutz lamachane vayishchat et haolah vayamsiu bnei Aharon elav et hadam vayizrakehu al hamizbeach saviv vet haolah hamitzihu elav Lintan checha bet harosh vayakter al hamizbeach vayakter al hamizbeach vayirchatz et hakarav et hakrayim vayirchatz et hakerev et hakrayim vayakter al haolah hamizbecha vayakrev et karnot ha'am et karbon ha'am vayikach et seir chatat asher la'am Vayishchatehu vayitaehu karishon vayakrev et haolah vayaseh tamishpat vayakrev et hamincha vay. No, keep kamishpat, right? Kamishpat.
You did it.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torat emet, v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Yamod Hamagbiah, Tamod Hagolemet. Please rise for the lifting and wrapping of the Sefer Torah. Let's get you a chair.
Yes, please.
Adonai,
Ya hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Kinis Gashava Levado, Shalom to Shamayim, Vayangen Leamo, Tilalo It's time to maxim bavdam chacham eoshad v'chachenam v'choni devata shalom hashivenu anay lecha v'nashuva chadesh yameinu kekedem Yitkada v'yitkada shemei v'abba Ve'amadi v'akute ve'amlich b'achute B'chayichon u'v'yomeichon U'chayedecho be'Yisrael V'agala v'zman kariv Imu amen Yesh be'abba mevarach Le'alav v'le'ayom v'ayah Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbarach v'yitma v'yitnaseh V'yitadar v'yitala v'yitala shmet kudesha b'richu Le'elam ego b'chata v'shivata Tushpata v'nachamata Tamaran be'oma v'imru Amen.
Amen. The whispered private Amidah for Shabbat afternoon is found on page 223 in Lev Shalem, or 234 or 574 for those of you who are in different Sidurim at home. Don't forget, please, to include the Ya'aleh v'Yavo paragraph found about 2/3 of the way through the Amidah for Chol HaMoed Pesach. So we make the insertion for the Passover holiday. Again, we're on page 223, and we recite this privately for now.
repetition is found on page 234 in the Slim Shalom. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzhak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor VaNorah Eloyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim V'konei HaKol V'zocher Chastei Avod U'mevii Gorel Livnei B'neihem L'man Shemo B'Yava Melech Ozer V'Ked Moshiach Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham V'Ked Sarah Atah Gibor Le'Lam Adonai Mechem V'Tavav L'Oshia Morid Atal Mechalkel Chaim V'Chesed Mechem Timochamim Rabim Somech Noflim V'Ofer Cholim V'Matir Asurim V'Kayem Ato L'Shenei Avar Michamoch Abar Gevorot Umido Melach Melech Memidochem Atzmiach Yeshua V'Ne'eman Atal Hayot Metim Baruch atah Adonai Mechayei HaMetim Nikadesh et Shecha Ba'olam Geshem Shemakdishi B'Rabi Shmei Barom Kagatu Vayad Niviecha V'Karazeh El Zeh V'Amar Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melech ha'aretz v'odo, L'matam Baruch Yomeru. Baruch Kevod Adonai Mimkamov, Divrei Kodeshecha Katuv Lemor. Yimelech Adonai le'olam, Elohai Tzion, L'dor v'ador, Hallelujah. L'dor v'ador Yigod lecha, L'netzach netzach kedushatcha naktish, V'shivchacha Eloheinu, V'binu l'emush le'olam v'ed, K'el melech gadol v'kadosh ata, Baruch atah Adonai, ha'el hakadosh. אתה אחד ושמך אחד, מכם חסרוק אחד בארץ, תפארת גדולה ועטרת ישועה, יום מנוחה יקדשי לעמך נתת, אברהם יגל, יצחק ירנן, יעקב עניו ינוחו בו, מנוחת אהבה ונדבה, מנוחת אמת ואמונה, מנוחת שלום ושלווה השקט והבטח, מנוחה שלמה שאתה רוצה בה, יכירו בניך וידעו כי מתחכים מנוחתם, ועל מנוחתם יקדישו את שמך. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, רצה במנוחתנו, קדשנו במצוותיך, ותן חלקנו בתורתך, שבנו בטובך, ושמחנו בישועתך, וטהר ליבנו לעובדך באמת, והנחילנו אדוני אלוהינו באהבה ורצון שבת קודשך, ואנוכו בה ישראל מקדשי שמך, ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת. רצה אדוני אלוהינו בעמך ישראל תפילתם, והשבת על עבודה לדביר ביתך, ותפילתם באהבה תקבל ברצון, ותהי רצון תמיד עבודת ישראל עמך. אלוהינו אלוהי אבותינו יעלה ויבוא ויגיע ויראה ויוצא וישמע ויקב יזהר זיכרוננו ופיקדוננו וזיכרון אבותינו וזיכרון משיח בן דוד עבדך וזיכרון ירושלים עיר קודשך וזיכרון כל אחיך בישראל לפניך לפלטה לטובה לחנך ישראל ולחיים ולשלום ביום חג המצות הזה, זוכרנו אדוני אלוהינו בו לטובה, ופוקדנו בו לברכה, והושיענו בו לחיים. ובדבר ישוע ורחמים חוס וחנן ורחם עלינו, והושיענו כי אל עינינו, כי אל מלך עננו רחום אתה, ותחזינה עינינו. ושובך לציון ברחמים, ברוך אתה אדוני המחזיר שכינתו לציון, מודים אנחנו לך. הטוב כאילו לרחמך, והרחם כאילו תם חסדיך, מעולם קיווינו לך. ועל כולם יתברך ויתרום שמך מלכנו, תמיד לעולם ועד. וכל יודוך סלע, ויעלו את שמך באמת, הישרתנו ורצותנו סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך לכנה להודות. שלום רב ישוע עמך, ועל כל יושבי תפארת תשים לעולם. כי אתה הוא מלך, אדון לכל השלום, וטוב בעיניך. לברך ולחסר בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני, המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום. יתקדש ויקדש ברבה, בעלמא תברכי במליך מלכותי בחייכון ובימיכון וחייך בישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב עמו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה ברך, לעולם אלומי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתמם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שבית הקדושה ברכו לעילא בנגו ברכתה ושירתה תושבתה ונחמתה דרמן בעלמא ועמו, אמן. תתקבל תפלות הון ואחרון לכל ישראל, כאדם ונשמע ועמו, אמן. יהי שלום רב מן שמיא וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועמו, אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועמו, אמן. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Mourner's Kaddish is on page 232 in Lev Shalem, or 249 or 600 in the other Sidorim.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, בעלמא דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון ובימיכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ועמו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם עולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל, שמי דקודשה ברכו, לעילא מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמא ואמרו, אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיא, וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו, אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו, אמן.
Yesher koach Alain for leading us in Mincha. Yesher koach Mark for reading Torah for us, and to everybody else who participated in the Mincha service. We're going to take a break now to nourish ourselves a little bit. It's a little different of spread. No bagels this week, but we've got something over in the corner and enough to make motzi, remembering that matzah is our motzi food for this week. So feel free to make a meal for yourself, or at least get a little bit of nash or nourishment, and then we'll get to learning by about 7:15 all together. So go grab us something, and we'll meet you back here in a few minutes.
See you tomorrow? 3 o'clock tomorrow. 7:15 on Monday.
Not worried about me. About tomorrow.
Rabbi.
So,
Almost like. Sites wants to recruit all of the peasants and have them join the party. And all the
my
Indian
daughter.
peasants are all here.
So big.
One by one.
Yeah, she's so grown up.
Over at the.
She's a big girl. She's all
Over at
hugging.
the. Glorious. Glorious people.
It's an incredible thing. It really is. So yeah, we do the difference over a few years.
There's one question. What's his name? Of glorious president of glorious republic.
And then all right. And then Marty. And we good? All right, here we go. I think all three of these are the same.
No.
Nonsense.
It's Dobrevsky, Dobrevsky. Remember, and what was the revolution establishing glorious democratic people's republic?
And you're good. Although there is, we'll talk another time about it, but there is actually.
No. It broke forth, abortion, April 8th, successful. Come back tomorrow, answer questions. Trembling right now,
No, you can have it now as well, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Answer the first question is, the overall government of Dobrevsky. Next, the second question is, it was both important people being successful. Come in, peasant. Next question. This man is shaking, he's trembling.
Rocky covered back in this, but gotta have what?
Over at the, what's your name? You over at those,
It's a wonderful location. Yeah, they serve.
and then is glorious president of glorious democratic republic. And then were you born? April 4th aborted, April 8th successful.
Nice, very nice.
So when you said you had, first one was unsuccessful, and the second one was better.
Oh my God. That sounds wonderful.
yeah.
Yeah, it was, yeah, no good. So sweet. I heard it was very emotional, but blessing on that, so very sweet. Chocolate dip time. Chocolate dip macaroon.
So how'd it go this morning? Get a standing ovation? Your father, your mother, your aunt, your uncle? Oh, this is the greatest sermon I've heard. Shabbat Kol HaMoed, Pesach. Very good.
You always think Sinte, sure.
Yeah, sure.
It was a very nice event this morning.
Oh, was it beautiful?
It was great.
You know the Barium meeting?
I was told, yeah.
No, but you know the important.
Yeah.
You knew it because I hiked with you.
Sometimes it's a problem.
First one.
Well, you lost your way first.
Rabbi, when is Pesach Sheni this year?
A month from now.
Oh, okay.
I don't know what the date is, but a month from now.
Okay.
Yes, it is your time.
Dr. Chevelle looked it up on my iPhone calendar.
Yeah, I'm from
Gotta
LA.
give them some slack.
And now I live in the city. Until this year, every time I was in LA, I was living in Valley, University of
That was basically the drop the first day with Rabbi Cliffelden and Rabbi Fox. Yeah, they gave this like this Baliyore Baliyunate, this idea of you shouldn't see it,
Right,
it shouldn't be found. And how is it that we still manage to have like all of these approximations and the same thing? So you can ask them for their source work and explore it.
Yeah.
Maintain my weight so far.
Right, I know.
Eating less.
I was like, how close can I make my way? Like,
For me, it's that I walk so much because my kids have play dates and
Right.
they go to friends and they come back, so
Yeah.
they're wandering around and like the whole neighborhood arrangement, you know?
as well. Yeah.
Wow. Finally came back.
Joey, do you know the Havdalah timing for tonight?
That's true. Yeah, people do. No, exactly.
I looked at it.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, it's gotta be between 8 and 8:05. I'll go to go forward. All right.
Do you ever remember having a Shabbat Mitzvah Torah reading which extends beyond Sheni? Did you get today?
We did not today, though.
Mark went too far. Mark went too far.
But he didn't go too far. We stopped him before he went past Shaney. Yeah. He stopped right before Shaney. But there actually are a few that go past Shaney.
Really?
Yes, there are a few that are fixed past Shaney. I'll have to look it up for your article, but I promise you, there are about 3 of them that go past Shaney because it's too short. Otherwise, I mean, Rosh Chodesh itself also go, we repeat the line, but right. But there are some weekday readings that we also go past the Shaney reading. Yeah. That's why I wasn't sure when he kept going. I said, I'm pretty sure it stops here, but I wasn't 100% sure, which is why I should have used the weekday book. Juan knew. Juan brought out the books, and he's right to break. He brought out the weekday Siddur reading so we could look at the breakdown. But I usually think of having the weekday Siddur there for the purposes of Male, which we don't do during Nissan. So I said, no, thank you. But, that's why I know it's feedback class. Do you want feedback class? It's a nice semester. Oh, okay. Oh, okay. That's a good one. That's why I know feedback class. That would be great. Sometimes I like to think of the people who, like the Venn diagram, this is true for me, I don't know if it's true for everyone, but Venn diagram of people who like Yabaut rules, people who like how the order of the service goes, and people who like Robert's rules and act as part. I was a parliamentarian of my college like student senate, and I feel like it makes a lot of sense for my life. Also enjoy all the rules of Minha. Okay. True about any rules at all. That's true. Some people are rule followers, and some people have absolutely no care for rules. Yeah, exactly. Okay.
That old page is kind of the when the time comes.
Sounds good. Yes. And it's a 1 weekday minion of the week because of Havdalah here. It's a one time a week when it's late enough because this congregation insists on waiting till 8 o'clock on me to do it, which Mary and I sit here and shake our heads at. Okay. You and I can count sometime at Shkia and go. Okay. Oh, hi, Jason. Nice to see you.
Hey, Rabbi Johnny, how are you? I thought I'd join. So,
Hello. And I see Gary and Tybal, Joy. Nice to see people. Very nice. Very cute Tybal. Great. Okay, so I'm not sure how it turned out this way, but for some reason we don't really need the first page. So you can just start on page 2, and we'll start on page 2 together. Okay. We're going to look at the first commandment of the Chag Hamatzot.
do you have this online so we can see it?
Yeah, it's in the, yes, it is. It was sent out in the bulletin. It was sent out in the bulletin that was sent on Wednesday.
My emails are all screwed up. Can I do the bulletin from the internet? I didn't know my emails are.
Because it's still Shabbat here, I can't do the forward thing, but it should be present there on the, yeah. So it's somewhere in
Rabbi Cantor,
Yes.
if you wouldn't object, I can go to it, take a screenshot, and then put it up as my virtual background.
Instead, actually, since it's already past Shabbat there, I don't mind if you wanted to share a link to it in the chat because you're already.
Oh, right, because
Shabbat,
I think the name is Jason. Jason, I'm in Maryland, so it's long past sundown here. I will do that.
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, thank you, Tybal. Okay, great. So we're going to study beginning with this verse in Exodus, in the book of Exodus. And it's the first time that we come across this commandment that we're supposed to celebrate some sort of a chag.
I'm sorry, Rabbi, just to tell you, there's
yeah.
no chat. There's no chat.
Oh,
It's
there's
not
no chat
that
right now, right? It was
no
disabled. Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, I'm sorry that it will have to just be one of those things where we set it up. I promise to be very verbal about if I ever get through my first text, we'll get there. But we're trying. I appreciate all of you. We'll get through all of this together. Okay, the feast of unleavened bread, the Chag Hamatzot. So you have a Chag, and a Chag, we have a noun describing another noun, also known as smichut. So we have a Chag Hamatzot. It is the festival of the matzot. We already know about matzot. Why? Because it was described that when we were leaving Egypt in the original story, that there was a series of flattened breads because we didn't have the time when we were leaving Egypt in order to actually have the dough rise. Therefore, we actually have these matzot. So when we're commanded to have a festival of the flattened breads, it should sound familiar in terms of a commanded holiday. And we're supposed to tishmor it. What do we know about the idea of shmirah, of shmor? What else are we commanded to shmor? Et Shabbat. That's the most familiar one, right? Shmor v'zachor. At the very least, that might be familiar to you because the poet in 16th century Lurianic Kabbalah wrote it into our poem Lechadodi. Shamor v'zachor b'dibor echad. And so it might be very familiar to you as shamor as a command. We should guard Shabbat or Shomer Yisrael from the Psalms and also from our poetic pieces of Tachanun. God is the guardian of Israel. Right, so a Shomer is also a guardian. You might know it from the universe of guarding over those who are deceased, because there's this idea of shmirah, also of guardianship over human beings. Okay, but we're supposed to guard. We're supposed to keep over. Guard, we are supposed to shmor, do this observance in some way. We translate it as observance, but we have to be careful of what that meant because shmor and also zachor and also keeping mitzvot, all of these things could theoretically fall under the giant category of observance. So I want to make sure we're being really careful with that verb. And this is the only verse we're looking at, so I have the leisure of picking it apart. And there's also Leil Shimurim, as Alan points out. And what is Leil Shimurim? The night of watching and guarding. And what was being watched and guarded? Right. So we knew there was going to be presumably a final one of these makot, of these plagues that was going to pass upon the people. And we were looking out to see what was going to happen in Goshen, in the land of where the Jews were residing, where the Israelites were residing. And so the Leil Shimurim refers to this idea of a nighttime when, as we think of it midrashically, the dogs didn't bark, right? It's this idea of an utter silence in which God passed over the homes that were marked with the blood of what? Right, of the sacrifice, exactly. So let's finish reading through this verse. I could pick apart verses all day long. I could take the entire hour picking apart this verse. Et chag hamatzot tishmor, shivat yamim. It's unclear to me whether shivat yamim belongs to the first part of this verse or the second. You'll see why in a second. Okay. Et chag hamatzot tishmor. That could be a phrase, or et chag hamatzot tishmor shivat yamim. You should guard for 7 days.
One thing's clear.
What's the one thing that's clear, Larry? 7 days.
So
Oh, thank you, Larry. Yes, it's very clear that it's 7 days. It's not a 2-day Yom Tov. Thank you very much. It's very clear here that we're not talking about 2 days of Yom Tov at the beginning and 2 days at the end, which is what is observed nowadays as what's the opposite of a leniency? A stringency. Yeah, I could only think of the word in Hebrew. Sorry, that happens to me lately. A chumrah, a leniency. Unfortunately, this idea has emerged in such a way that it's become more burdensome than joyful to many people. Fortunate to Larry in particular, fortunately, given that 75 years ago there was a reinstatement of the notion of statehood and much more broadly residency in and the possibility of Jewish ownership of land in the land of Israel. Since then, it has been possible for people both inside the land of Israel, meaning what is considered Eretz Yisrael biblically, and also people who live outside of it but own land inside the land of Israel, to claim this kind of biblical observance. So both for those who are currently living in Israel, and even for those who own land in Israel or own a place in Israel, even, they would say that they can observe the way that we go back to this biblical observance. Okay, we're almost done picking this apart. We observe it for 7 days. Tochel matzot. So it might be 7 days you're supposed to, it might be et chag hamatzot tishmor, you should guard the chag hamatzot, the holiday of matzahs. Shivat yamim tochel matzot, 7 days you should eat matzot. That we do. We don't, we have, we get that one down, right? We had 3 plates of matzot here. I'm sure we could go into great detail on what matzot were for them. Hurried cakes. They were probably soft. That's for another discussion, right? They were probably not crunchy. Oh, both Larry and Alan want to say something about this. Yes. Yes, Alan?
Just briefly, and this has always puzzled me because there's so many places in the Bible, in the Torah, where it says 7 days you shall eat matzah. Yet the halacha is you're only required to eat matzah on day 1 and day 2.
Great.
I never understood that.
So Alan wants to know why it says so many places in the Torah that you should eat matzah, tochel matzot shivat yamim, that you're supposed to be tochel matzot, you're supposed to eat it. But then the halacha turns out to be for 2 days only that we are required to eat matzot as the kind of baseline tier. That is for another shiur, but I do have an answer for you. I do have an answer for you, and I think that it has to do with the onus of having to have what it takes to actually make kosher matzot. So
Okay, but just one more tidbit, because there are articles in here that talk about that Passover is really a combination of Chag HaMatzot, which was for 7 days,
Mhm.
and Chag HaPesach for 1 day.
Mhm.
So Mahu Detema, one would think that if you're going to have a holiday Chag HaMatzot for 7 days, that you would otherwise be required to eat matzah for 7 days.
So if it's
I'm sure there's a reason why we don't.
you would think if you were combining these 2 holidays, this Chag HaMatzot and Chag HaPesach, that perhaps one would be actually required to eat it for the 7 days. But we sincerely wind up with halacha across the board that only requires us for 2 days. Now we're going to talk about combining with a completely different festival in this verse. So look here in the midway through the verse. So this is Shivat Yamim Tochal Matzot Asher Tziviticha Lemoed Chodesh Ha'aviv Ki v'Chodesh Ha'aviv Yatzata Mi Mitzrayim. So this is how I've commanded you at the time of the month of Aviv. And what is this month of Aviv? Right, Aviv we know as a springtime month, because in the month of Aviv, Yatzata Mi Mitzrayim, what do we understand rabbinically to be the month of Aviv? We understand it to be Nisan. Ultimately, we understand that the beginning of the month of Aviv is the beginning of the new year. But the point here is that it is calendarically remembered, and we do this at the same time on the calendar as when we went out from Mitzrayim, when we went out from Egypt. Now, this commandment that's present in, we're not going to talk about the context so that we can have a fun reveal at the end. But this particular command comes to tell us that we're supposed to observe Chag HaMatzot So this feast of matzah, it tells us we're supposed to eat matzah. We're supposed to observe the holiday for 7 days, and that we're supposed to do it at the appointed time of the month of Aviv, because that's when we went out from Egypt. Are we all on the same page about that? We get that? Fantastic. We're going to study just a little bit of Pesachim, which is the tractate of both Mishnah, and then this is the Bavli, this is the Babylonian Talmud, the tractate that emerges from that Mishnaic conversation. I'd like to remind people when this emerges. The Mishnah is codified as an oral conversation in the year roughly 200 Common Era. The Talmudic conversation that we're about to read is codified as an oral conversation in about the year 600 CE. Okay, everybody on the same page? Great. So this is the 118th daf page from that Talmud, and it's a conversation that starts with Rav Sheshet quoting from one of the rabbis who is mentioned at least twice in most Haggadot. Okay, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. He is the one who miraculously, we were talking about this at our Seder table. Ella, remember we were saying his hair turned white because he's ke shivim, right? He was like 70 years old. He had this miraculous occurrence, and he thought he wouldn't be taken seriously. So he's Elazar ben Azariah. He was appointed Rosh Yeshiva, but he had this miraculous occurrence that he was made to look like he was old enough to run the yeshiva because he was very nervous about being able to be believed and trusted as a sage in his own time. So Rav Sheshet is coming here to quote Elazar ben Azariah, who himself is transmitting a statement from the Amoraim, who were much earlier sages. And he's saying the following. He says, Kol hamivazeh et hamoadot ke'ilu oved avodah zarah. Anybody who is disparaging, so to speak, towards the festivals, towards the chagim, it's as though they are doing avodah zarah. That's a pretty intense statement. Yeah. What's avodah zarah? Idol worship. And avodah zarah probably actually means idol worship to those in the Mishnaic and Talmudic conversation. Tybal, you had a thought?
No, actually a question. I
Yeah.
wondered by context, is this only the 3 pilgrimage, or are disparaging other holidays also up there?
In this
Like if you
particular case, I
disparage
believe he's
Yom
talking about the
Kippur.
3 Moedim. Yeah, I think you're right.
So, but then one could in theory disparage Yom Kippur, which is the Shabbat of all Shabbatot, and it's not the same problem.
I think in this particular case, we're just talking about the Moed holidays. I think we're talking about the pilgrimage festival. So you're right that there's a more expansive conversation to be had about the others, but there's a reason why they're mentioning this particular type of holiday. So he's saying all those who would dilute, disparage, who would put down the festival holidays, it's like they're idol worshiping. And he's going to bring an example of a juxtaposition of verses as they're given. Okay. So he's going to go back and he's going to cite this verse that I brought to you. He's going to say, go to the second verse first. Uchtiv batre. The batre means like second. Okay. See the very last line in the Hebrew? It says, Et chag hamatzot tishmor. That's our verse that I just cited. You see the last words in the Hebrew? Et chag hamatzot tishmor. The festival of matzah you should keep. If you look up slightly, it says, Elohei masecha lo ta'aselach. And you shall not make Elohei masecha. Those are golden calves, right? You shouldn't make for yourselves molten idols. What is the proof text that he's going to? He's saying, well, verse 18 in the Torah that we quoted here is, Et chag hamatzot tishmor shivat yamim tochal matzot asher tziviticha lamoed chodesh ha'aviv ki v'chodesh ha'aviv yatsatem mimitzrayim. But if you back up one verse, the verse stands alone. Elohei masecha lo ta'aselach. You shall not make for yourself molten gods. And it is odd. It stands out in this whole section because the question is why would those two things, they're answering a question that we didn't ask here in this conversation, which is why would molten gods, golden calves, so to speak, be mentioned in the same breath in the next verse over from this verse about Chag HaMatzot? Furthermore, what does it mean to disparage the holiday? For that, we're going to go to a different commentator. So let's move to the next page, and we're going to look at Sharei Tshuva, which is a much, much, much later commentary. And in order to get through it, we're going to mostly read the commentary in the English. So it's going to jump in right at the inyan of this fellow, this person who is mivazeh et hameodot. Okay, moadot. Sorry, et hamoadot. So it's the person who is disparaging the holidays. She'oseh malacha, that he does malacha, he does work on the intermediate days of the festival, and doesn't worry, spurns the punishment, because the prohibition of work on the intermediate days of the festival is not meforash b'Torah. It's not explicit in the Torah. Let me stop there for a second. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? What is Sharei Tshuva saying? That what does it mean to disparage the festivals? It means to work on Chol HaMoed, to do malacha, not to work as in like you're going to work. I want to be very clear here. They're not saying go to work. They're not saying people who go to their jobs are the worst and they're idol worshipers. That's not what he's saying. He's saying to do malacha, as in to do what is prohibited on Yom Tov, on the days of Chol HaMoed. That is what makes you ki'ilu, you are doing avodah zarah. But how would you drive to your job without doing malacha? This is like, I want to get some organized thoughts from people. So raise some hands and let me take some thoughts. Joey, yes.
Where would you draw the line on that?
Okay, so Joey asks it this way: where would you draw the line on that? Right? So it's the line that if you do anything that would be otherwise prohibited on a Yom Tov, and you do it on Chol HaMoed, that makes you into one of these folks who is a transgressor on or a disparager on a Chol HaMoed, or not. What does that do? Remember, there's more of this text to study as well. We're going to get further into it, right? And you're going to read ahead if you need to. Okay. So where's the line? Is that it, or is there a differentiator? Is there a differential between Yom Tov and Chol HaMoed and the Malacha or the other things that we might do? Okay. Who else? I'll get you in a second, Tybal. I want to see if there's anyone else we haven't heard from. Anyone else have a comment or a question? So certain things are very explicitly laid out as malacha. There are 39 labors and subcategories from those labors that are laid out as to what is malacha. So it does seem like it's pretty clear, what the line might be for this particular commentator as to what happens during Chol HaMoed. Okay, yeah. Mm-hmm. Right, so if it is indeed Chol HaMoed, why aren't you free? Like, give me the reason. I understand it's not explicitly stated in the Torah, but why wouldn't we be free, you would ask, right, to do what it is that we would otherwise do on other days? It's the festival, but it's not the days of Yom Tov that are taking place, right? Okay. Okay, so Sandra's saying that she's guessing the point of this is that you shouldn't forget that it's still Pesach, or if you don't mind my amending to your comment saying that it's still Chag HaMatzot, right? According to, if we're looking at all the different ways that this is Chag, one might forget that it's still Chag HaMatzot if one treats those days differently. Okay. Okay, let's read a little more in here. Tybal, let me let you either comment or ask, and then I'll go back to the.
Just fast, because what it seemed to me first that it says this commentate, the idea was to make only one differentiation. It's either a chag or it's the weekday, and it's doing away with the interim status. I mean, granted, those days we don't have all the extra services and all those things, but for some reason, whoever it was didn't like two segments, three categories with a segmentation between the three.
Right. So this person's very uncomfortable with this idea of having this in between category, this Benoni category, a third segmentation of this idea of work and what is permissible work and what is not permissible work. Furthermore, I'd like to say that even though it's not explicitly said in here, I have lots of questions about what it means for consumption of food, because I would argue back at this commentator, I make no differentiation the way I consume food on day 1 of Pesach and on the 3rd day of Chol HaMoed Pesach. There's no differentiation in the way I use my kitchen, the way I consume food, what I permit myself to eat, don't permit myself to eat. There is, however, there are customs out there like gebrachs that actually do make differentiations. Let me elucidate that in case there's anyone who isn't familiar with this idea, which is that there are those out there who are so strict that they would not permit even already baked matzah, that is matzah itself and matzah that's ground up, like matzah meal, matzah farfel, matzah flour, to touch any sort of moisture or liquid, such that even that would then bake and resemble something that's leavened. But on the last day of Pesach, they specifically and deliberately ensure that they eat that, because they want to be clear that that is not explicitly prohibited. So they go about eating gebrachs, eating that moistened, it's a terrible way to describe it, the wetted matzot on that last day. Right. We're saying we made a great Cards Against Mitzrayim, like a Kids Against Humanity game at home, and we were saying that soggy matzah should be a clue next year, right? Because like, who wants soggy matzah? But apparently, some people want the right to soggy matzah, right? They want their matzah brai on the last day. So, did you have something to add? Okay, so we're going to keep reading in this commentary because we're going to get a little further into what this particular commentator has to say. Oh, Larry has something to say.
It's only, I have to say, my father, and it wasn't for religious reasons at all, but his practice, which I'm going to do tonight when I go home, was to take a board of matzah and to sprinkle it with water and put salt on it.
Oh, dafka, just to sprinkle it. Your father's practice was to sprinkle water and put and put salt on so it'd stick.
A board of matzah, not so much that it was soggy.
Yeah.
Put salt on it so it would stick to the matzah.
It sounds perfect to me.
No, I said no. No, in no religious reasons. I'm saying.
It's just tasty. Right. Tonight, in honor of your father, you'll have a little bit of salty matzah that requires a little sprinkle of water. Okay, I like it. It reminds me of how, like, in my husband's household, I asked him to please pass the salt the first, which is a whole other thing. They don't pass salt in their household. I asked him to pass the salt for the hard-boiled eggs on their table, the first Seder, and he said, no, we don't actually put salt on our Seder table. We use the salt water for everything. So they use the salt water for their soup. They use the salt water for their eggs. They use the salt water for the matzah, for everything. Yeah, which is a very similar idea. Like you want to use it for the everything. Yeah, Marshall.
I just want to comment that I don't know what the word hamibazeh means, in the sense that here, we have a translation here,
Yeah.
which is spurn.
Yeah.
Before, I think, translated it as disparage.
As disparage, yeah.
In not a respectful way.
Correct.
And I guess the second question is, I don't know what chol hamoed means. It's neither completely chol, it's not completely moed, but as you say, it's an intermediate situation. So
sure.
I don't want to go too far.
Without knowing what.
I want to have like a limit as to what I'm allowed to do and not allowed to do.
Right. So, okay, we need to both break down a little bit mivazeh, and also we need to break down Chol HaMoed, and then we'll go on with the commentary. So very quickly, bizui, the idea of bizui or mivazeh, it's the same idea and same root. It's almost nearly making a waste of. So it's as disparaging or putting down in stature. So I would say like we might even translate it as, I guess, lowering in stature or something along those lines. But I think that's why disparaging is used, and spurning is a nice way of putting it as well. And then in terms of Chol HaMoed, generally speaking, the notion is that both for Sukkot and also for Pesach, the idea is that there are days that are inclusive to, they are the days that fall interim to two sets of Yom Tov. That's the understanding. That's the rabbinic understanding. So the days that fall interim to Yom Tov, and there are laws, and have been for hundreds and hundreds of years, all of them rabbinic, which is the point of this commentator, all of them rabbinic, which apply to those interim days. So there are laws that only apply Chol HaMoed Sukkot, and there are laws that only apply Chol HaMoed Pesach. There are things that are regulations as to what one may do on those days that are different than what one would do on Yom Tov. Okay, so to continue in this commentary and to finish up our conversation, we're going to go from the idea of is not explicit in the Torah. And this is in the way of one who is a heretic for one thing, to anger, as we have explained, such that he has no share in the world to come. So hold on tight, because that gets a little philosophical. And now I'm going to break down that statement. And our rabbis, may their memory be blessed, said in Bechorot, that is the tractate in the Babylonian Talmud of Bechorot 30b, that one who comes to convert and says, behold, I accept all of the Torah except for one matter from the words of the sages, we do not accept him. And they, may their memory be blessed, said in Makot 23a, that's the another tractate of Talmud, one who spurns the holidays is like one who worships idolatry. This is the same statement, right? This is a quote of that same statement of Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, quoting the Amoraim. This may actually be the Amoraim there. You shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, the Chag HaMatzot, and adjacent to it is this verse about you shall not make molten gods for yourselves. And they, may their memory be blessed, explain in Chagiga 18a, you shall observe the feast of unleavened bread, observe to not do work all of the feast of unleavened bread. And we were warned with this about work on the intermediate days of the festival. And that which is written in Vayikra in the 23rd chapter, verse 39, a Shabbat Shabbaton, a complete rest on the first day, and a complete rest on the 8th day, is because there are many types of work that are permitted on the intermediate days of the festival, as is explained in their words, may they be blessed. So what's brought here by our commentator is this idea that just as the rabbis taught, the sages taught, that if somebody were to come and say, I'd like to convert to Judaism, and I'm cool with everything I've been taught, there's just this one thing, right? This one food or this one holiday or this one concept or this one prayer that I cannot take upon myself. They're holding that up by comparison to this idea, the one who does all of Pesach, Yom Tov, and completely celebrates it, does the Seder meals, does the festivals with whole heart, and sings Hallel until the wee hours of the morning, and completes all of the festival celebrations just as one would hope one would do, invites their guests, opens the door for Elijah, and then Chol HaMoed comes, and they're just right back to work as usual and go back to their regular stuff. They're making a comparison between those two teachings. I find that stretch a really big stretch. I'm not even sure that it's a particularly poetic or liturgically or sort of literarily great stretch to make in terms of a commentary. But what I find really interesting about it is to think about the reality that somebody would be living in that would draw them to make this kind of a tshuva, this kind of a response paper. What exactly were people doing? Because I don't think that the thing they were doing was going out for pancakes on day 3 that caused this response. That's not the issue. The response is going back to life as usual, which makes me think about how interesting it is that we so hyper focus on this idea as the verse is focused in. That's why I wanted us to go deeply into the verse. The verse says you should eat matzot for 7 days and you should observe a chag. So explicitly in the Torah, we're supposed to eat matzahs and we're really hyper focused on the food. And you know what? I think centuries and centuries later, we've done a really good job of that. But what we haven't done in particular is made the rest of the holiday about much of anything other than food. Like if I asked you, what are you doing to celebrate the 4th day of Pesach? What are you doing for the 2nd day of Chol Moed Pesach? What are you doing? Eating more matzah, right? Like eating more matzah. Are you having, another Seder? Are you doing something else? Are you celebrating freedom? What happens after those days? I actually think it's a brilliant point. I don't think the point here is to disparage people, to use their, words. I don't think it's to be mivazeh. I don't think it's to say it's so terrible that you go back to work. I don't think that's the problem here, to kind of graft a little bit of the language. I think that the question here is, what are you doing to differentiate this Tuesday from any other Tuesday during the year besides eating the matzot? What is it that you're doing that's a positive observance of Pesach, other than refraining from what you would otherwise be doing? I would love to take either comments or questions on this. I saw Larry's hand first, and then I'll come to you.
Quick comments. It's very different in Sukkot, because in Sukkot you're eating in the sukkah.
100% totally different at Sukkot because you're eating in the sukkah, and it is completely experientially different.
And the second thing is, in the early days of Israel's founding, when Israel was much more secular than it is now, they established that on Chol Moed, the work day would be shorter than it was during the rest of the year. So even if you choose to work, you only work 6 hours that day as opposed to 8 or 9, whatever the case would be.
Oh, I love that.
The drawback is, if you take that day off, it's not a drawback, is if you take that day off, you don't use a full work day off. You're only using it 6 hours and actually calculate that and give it back to you.
That's so interesting.
They have made, and it's true to this day.
So to this day, Larry says, since the founding of the state of Israel, it's the case that people actually have a shorter set work day and work hours, and the implications of that are that one actually has a different work week during the work week, and therefore malacha is actually different during one's work week of the intermediate days. I saw your hand, yeah.
So, it is food oriented, I should say, but, I go to the office, but it's gonna be a matzah sandwich as opposed to a regular sandwich. There's certain things you can't eat anyway, and I think that is in the back of your mind of, I can't have any snacks or this or that. So it's not, the full observance of not working, but you still are realizing that you can't do certain things. You still have prohibitions.
Right. So to a certain extent, I agree with you. Like, this idea is that the prohibitions on what it is that we can't eat during the week, and therefore, bringing that matzah sandwich to work, to school, making sure that we don't, stop for that usual frappuccino, whatever it was, right? And maybe just that black cup of coffee if you feel comfortable doing so, even outside the house. We could talk about that. I think that's probably fine. But I think that what this tshuva would say is, it would probably ask each individual person, is that enough to differentiate? Because if it is enough for you, and if it really does feel not just onerous, I don't think the point is to be onerous, but if it really does feel different than other days, you kind of put a different mat down on your desk and you pull out your sandwich and everyone's saying, oh, how's your Passover holiday going? And it's a little bit different for you, then perhaps it really is a different kind of a work week, and perhaps you go home a little early to cook things and that kind. Maybe it really is differentiated. But if it's not so differentiated, I think that this tshuva is coming to say, what else could you be doing that might differentiate it a little bit more? And I do think that it's speaking to this idea. I don't think I knew about the shortened work week. I knew about the idea that like it was not the week to go to the biblical zoo in Israel because good luck, there are 1,400,000 whatever people, crawling all over, because the idea is you really do make that week different and go and do tiyulim, go and do trips. But I think making the week different is something that we sometimes miss because it is such a week geared towards the prohibitions alone. But for some people, I agree with you, those prohibitions actually make for such a different week that might be enough. I saw Sandra's hand. Yeah. Great question. So clearly we don't do this anymore. Clearly we don't differentiate. How do we get from there to here? There are a lot of answers to that. In some communities, they actually still are to a certain extent there. I'm going to offer one particular example of something that we do that's a little bit different and differentiated in our household that has nothing to do with food. And it is mentioned in the codes. So it was preserved into the kind of 15th century codes. And it's kind of a silly example, but it's a fun example to give you a little bit of context. And then I'm going to give you an offering of something to think about to bring home either to yourself or to your family. So here's the example that has to do with how we got from there to here. It's a little bit an answer to that question. And then I'll close with an offering to all of you. The example is that we're told, I'm not sure if this is in Mishnah Torah, but I know for sure in Shulchan Aruch, we're told that one is supposed to refrain from doing laundry during the days of Chol Moed. So in our family, well, hang on. Better that one should do laundry on Chol Moed than on Yom Tov. So better that one should do laundry on Chol Moed than on Yom Tov. So good for you if you're waiting till Chol Moed. I'm saying praiseworthy. It's wonderful. But one is supposed to, and so there's this wonderful idea that one should then, some of the hachana, some of the preparation for the holiday isn't just buying new clothing, but it's also doing laundry with the thought that I'm freeing myself. I'm sort of anticipating, so I can say thanks, past Hillary, for doing all that laundry. Other than watching maybe some undergarments during the week, like I would definitely do my best so that during that week I'm freed up from a labor that I would otherwise be doing during the week. So there are labors that we can kind of preface our observance of, and perhaps you could think about how you could do that for yourself during Sukkot. There are certain things that you can do to kind of prep your home for, or pre-buy, pre-do in your home in order to free yourself from that sort of a labor. That aside, since that I was going to say that ship has sailed, right? Like that was pre-Pesach anyway. I was going to say I want to actually encourage you to not leave the Seder questions aside. Before you go and you pack up your Haggadot, because I'm guessing that most of you probably still have Haggadot somewhere that are like lying around your house. Challenge yourself, like stick it with a magnet to the fridge, or take something tonight. Don't leave all of the amazing thoughtfulness of Seder at the Seder. Take it into the week. Don't leave all of the Pesachness of Pesach just at the Seders. I think that there's a wonderful thought there of bringing the holiday all through the days of Pesach. I want to wish for you that, there are all sorts of ways that you can do this. If you're the kind of person who makes brachot sometimes over food, do the after blessing thoughtfully, and make those inclusions for Pesach and remind yourself that it's still Pesach. If you're the kind of person who doesn't do that so much, take some of the questions you never got to this year in the Haggadah, and again, paste them up on your refrigerator, or text them to your kids who are going back to their wherever it is that they're living, and have a text conversation, which is something you can't necessarily do if you have certain observances on Yom Tov. Text them and have a nice back and forth. What's your fifth question this year during the week? So that's my challenge to all of us. Before we go, I see Chase and Sandries, and I'm going to give you a last comment or question.
Yeah, I know when you were talking about Sukkot, I was thinking about my bar mitzvah because it was on Sukkot, and I thought it was interesting because this year, Thursday or Friday reading that Mark did really amazing, Yosher Koach again. was Parshat Emor, which is part of, which was part of Sukkot. So I was thinking about as he was reading it, and I was kind of singing along. So it was just making me think. That's it.
Exactly. That and it's connected in, and is that's because you had a Sukkot bar mitzvah, right? Chol Hamoed Sukkot bar
Yeah,
mitzvah.
I have mine on Sukkot day 1 of 2021.
Exactly. And we find ourselves, that's actually a great note to lead to kind of end on, which is that as we go to count the Omer tonight, it's such a wonderful thing when we think about these texts to get ourselves in, thinking about the year as a web of these chagim. Even though we don't do them as pilgrimage festivals anymore, already we're counting the Omer to get ourselves into Shavuot. And then from Shavuot, we're already thinking to the next festival, to Sukkot, and into these intermediate days. So may we always be looking forward to the joy of the next festival, anticipating it with joy, reading something and thinking about the next time that we can host and ask questions and do wonderful things together. And I hope that the joy of Pesach is with you all through Chol Hamoed. With that, I'm going to ask if anybody did anybody wash and eat matzah as their bread? Anyone? Did anyone wash and eat matzah as their, did anyone make motzi on matzah?
Anyone else whose voice is in better shape?
It sounds to me like you're going to be the only one. I'll give you space and time to do your own Birkat Hamazon, because it looks like we didn't have others who did that, which sometimes happens when matzah is the option as opposed to bagels. In just a moment, then we'll, but feel free to do Birkat Hamazon. Take a few moments to do Birkat Hamazon or your after blessing if you had some food. And then we will move into Mariv, and Larry is going to lead us. This is in your father's memory, right? So in memory of his father on his yard site, we'll begin in just a few moments and I'll announce page numbers. Baruch Tiyeh. Baruch Atih. Yeah.
Can you address the question of to fill it or not to fill it? You said follow the practice of your father. Well, that's not going to make help at all. Ashkenazim do.
Generally speaking, have worn it, but I believe it was the Arizal during Chol Hamoed, not significant, but usually during Chol Hamoed, during Yom Tov. I think that it's Arizal who sort of popularized and then got it into the norm, both because Arizal shows up. Arizal meaning like the practice of like modern Zionists, modern baptism of the Nephilim, and also because Arizal has some like Musaf and tradition into Chabad, and so with both of those practices, people will do like a one-off during Chol Hamoed, and because of that, we wanted a lot of people practice not learning during Chol Hamoed. And most people who I met who had Jewish roots, their fathers and grandfathers did.
Armenian, only Michael Bear. There may be some others that occasionally come, but the only regular is Michael Bear.
It's an amazing thing, though. I say this with no neither clarity nor praise us. It's amazing how many things crept into our tradition, the liturgy, through the Zionist ideology. And the best example of that is our pronunciation of Hebrew and Armenian. Like, we're a widely Ashkenazi normative Minyan here, so we pronounce our Hebrew like Ben Yehuda pronounces Hebrew. So there are a lot of things that make it into our norms that are not kind of the way that my grandfather and his parents came from Eastern Europe. So we don't need to trace that. It's really interesting. It's the same. Yeah, the same thing happens. We're. We were just talking about whether or not we wear tefillin on Chol Moed.
Art.
It's a good. I guess enough that you could pretend you could sleep on it. Yeah, I don't know. It's a very good question.
Can I ask one question before you start too?
Yeah.
It's gonna sound really stupid probably to most of you guys, but I've never heard what this whole Hamoed thing is. Can you
Yeah.
just explain it to me for
Yeah.
like a quick
So-
abbreviated version? So
Chol means not a Shabbat or Yom Tov, so a day a day that's like not a festival or a Shabbat. So that's Chol, and Moed is the festival. So it's the days that are between the two ends of a holiday. So the first 2 days of Passover are a holiday, are Yom Tov, and so are the last two. At least that's true outside of the land of Israel. And so those days in between are called Chol HaMoed, like sort of the in between non-festival days of the festival.
so Friday through Tuesday.
So Friday through Tuesday, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for explaining.
No problem. Okay. Wherever Larry went. Oh yeah, Larry, you can get started in a moment. Let me just get you the page numbers and all the Sidurim. One second, I have to
No problem, take your time.
get this page. Oh, it's stapled, this one. Huh. Well, it's morning.
Count
Where'd
the
the evening
Omer
one?
before Alenu?
Say that again?
Count the Omer before Alenu, or you want me to?
Before Eleno, I think. No, because it'll already be that. Oh, there's the sheet. It'll already be. Okay. We begin. We're on page 264. We rise for Baruch Hu. We're on 281 or 200 and the other Sidurim. 264 and Lev Shalem. After the Baruch Hu, you can be seated.
והוא רחום מכפר עוון ולא ישחית וירבה להשיב אפו ולא כחמתו אדוני הושיע המלך עינינו ויום קוראנו ברכו את אדוני המבורך ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד ברוך אדוני המבורך אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני המרחיב הרבים אהבת עולם בית ישראל ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו אדוני אחד אדוני אלוהיכם אמת ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ונישראל ענו שירה בשמחה רבה ואמרו כולם מי כמוך בין מרנוי מי כמוך נר בקודש נורא תהילות עושה פלא מלכותך ורובניך בוקעים לפני משה זה אלי ענו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגואלו חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל השכיבנו עלינו לשלום עמדנו, מקינו לחיים, ופרוס לנו זוכת שמך. ושמור צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ושלום מיטב יד עולם, ברוך אתה אדוני, שומר עמו ישראל לעד. Intertrinity, do we do, yeah? Baruch Adonai לעולם, אמן ואמן. כי המלכות שלך היא עולמית, אל תמלוך בכבוד, כי אין לנו מלך אלא אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, המלך בכבודו, תמיד ימלוך לעולם ועד, ועל כל מעשיו. יתגדל וקדש מרבה, ויעמד יברח חירותי ומלכותי, וחי יכונן ויכונן וחי לכל בישראל, ועגלה בזמן קריב ימרמם. יש מרבה מבורך, וילמה ממיה. יתברך וישתבח ויפאר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתלש מנקודשה בריחו. לעילם ינקור ברכתה וישורתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירם ביומה, ויאמרו אמן.
Amen. The Amidah for the end of Shabbat is found on page 270 or in the other Sidurim on 286 or 210. It's said privately in a whisper. Please don't forget to make insertions, inclusions for Chol HaMoed Pesach. If you haven't yet completed your private Amidah, please take your time. The Chatzi Kaddish is found on page
Chatzi Kaddish?
279.
Oh.
On page 279.
יתגלה וקדש מן רבה, ביומא דברך חיותי ולמיכה חוטא, בחיי חונם וחונם וחיי לכו בישראל, בעגלה בזמן קריב ימרמן. ישמי רבה מבורך, חילמו מיומיה, יתברך וישתבח ויפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו. לעילם מכל ברכתה וישועתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירם ביומא וימרמן.
Amen. You can be seated, and we're in the middle of 279.
והינו אלוהינו עלינו מעשה ידינו כונני עלינו מעשה ידינו כוננהו יושב וסתר עליון. אורך ממספיהו וירא בשועתי, אורך ממספיהו וירא בשועתי.
We turn back in our Sidurim to page 216, second paragraph on the page, the paragraph that begins the Atah Kadosh, page 216.
ואתה קדוש יושב תהילות לישראל וקרא זלזל ויאמר
קדוש
קדוש קדוש קדוש אדוני צבאות מפרץ כבודו. ותישאני רוח וישמע אחרי כל רעש גדול לעבור דבר נוי ממקומו. אדוני ימלוך עולם ועד. צדק אתה כצדק לעולם ותורתך אמת. יהי רצון לפניך. ויבדחו בך ידי שמך כי לא עזבת דרשך אדוני, אדוני חפץ למען צדקו, יאדיר תורה ויאדיר.
Kaddish Shalem is on page 280.
יתגדל ויקדש מן רבה, ויעמד יברח חירותי ולמיכה חוטא, וחי חונב מיכונב וחי לכו בישראל, בעגלה בזמן קריב ימרמן. יש מן רבה מבורך, לעילם מיומיה, יתברך וישתבח ויפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקודשה בריחו. לעילם מכל ברכתה וישועתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דמירם ביומיו ימרמן. תתקבל צלות הון ובטון לכל ישראל קדמו ושמיא וימרמן. יהי שלום רב מן שמיא וחיים עלינו ויעקב ישראל וימרמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ויעקב ישראל ויאמרו אמן. Omer?
Oh, yeah, sorry. Omer, yes, I knew it.
Page 63. Hinene mukhanum zuman, hinene mukhanum zuman, hinene mukhanum zuman, lekayim mitzvat aseh, lekayim mitzvat aseh, כמו שכתוב בתורה, hinene mukhanum zuman, כמו שכתוב בתורה, הנני מוכן ומזומן, וספרתם לכם ממחרת השבת, הנני מוכן ומזומן, מיום אביכם את עומר התנופה, הנני מוכן ומזומן. 7 שבתות תמימות תהיינה, עד מחרת השבת השביעית תספרו 50 יום. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר קידשנו בצאתיו וציוונו ספירת העומר. היום 3 ימים לעומר.
Night is the third night of the Omer. You can consider yourselves having fulfilled your obligation to count as now 3 stars are in the sky. Again, we're on page 281.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שלא עשינו כגיא ארצות, ולא שמנו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגור עלינו ככה המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא ששמיים. על כן נקבל עלינו לראות מהבית ופרוזך, לבים גלולים מהארץ, וללים קרות יקראתון. ככתוב בתורתך לא ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה, ויעמד דברה חירותי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל, בעגלה וזמן קריב אמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ומעלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בימה ויאמרו אמן. יהי שלום רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ויאמרו אמן.
Amen. Yeshar Koach. May your father's memory be for a blessing, Larry.
Just briefly say before we do Havdalah, as I light the candle, that if you didn't yet hear the news, the father of our member, Bob Braun, passed over the holiday after second night Seder. The funeral, the burial, will be on Monday morning, and then Shiva is postponed until after Yom Tov, so that will take place next week. May his memory be for a blessing. You can stay tuned for news about that. Please join us for Minyan tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your Pesach holiday, and we'll continue with Havdalah with Ella's help.
Monday and Tuesday at 7:15.
Yes, Monday, Tuesday, 7:15. I'm saying it into our feed so people can hear online. Oh, it's crackling. Ooh. הנה אל ישועתי, אפתח ולא אבחר, כי עוזי וזמרתי, אדוני ויהי לי לישועה, ושמעתי וששון, ממעייני הישועה, לאדוני הישועה, הלך ברכתך סלע, Adonai Tzivaot Imanu Miskav Lainu Elohei Yaakov Selah Adonai Tzivaot Asher Adam Boiteach Bach Adonai Hoshiach HaMelech Yaneinu Yom Koreinu Layehudim Haitara Lesimcha v'sason mikar Kein tichelainu Kotze Yeshu Hotesa Uv'shem Adonai Yikra Yainenai 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 Savri Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Mecholam borei Pri HaKafe Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Mecholam borei Minei B'Samim Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei meorei ha'esh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, המבדיל בין קודש לחול בין אור לחושך בין ישראל לעמים בין יום השביעי לששת ימי המעשה ברוך אתה אדוני המבדיל בין קודש לחול. המבדיל בין קודש לחול חטאותינו ימחול זרענו וכספנו ירבה הרבה כחול והכוכבים הלילה זרענו וכספנו ירבה הרבה כחול והכוכבים בלילה שבוע טוב 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 אליהו הנביא אליהו התשבי אליהו 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 הגלעדי במהרה בימינו יבוא אלינו עם משיח בן דוד עם משיח בן דוד. שבוע טוב everybody.
Rabbi Chorney, I just wanted to say thank you so much. That made me think of my grandpa Howard as you were saying that, because he always loved singing that when he put me to bed every night. So
It's nice to see you and nice to think of your grandpa Howard.
it's nice to see you. Tell Rabbi Clickfall to say hi. Is Mark still there, or did he
Well,
leave?
no, he's not here in the room anymore, but I will also say hi to him for you.
Okay, sounds good.
Rabbi?
Yes, Taiwo?
What?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Jason?
No, that was it for me.
But since Jason talked about having a bar mitzvah during Sukkot,
Yeah.
my only child, his was on Chol HaMoed Sukkot, which the parsha is that greatest hits parsha, which is the same as Chol HaMoed Pesach. So I just thought I would put up, this was a paper cut. There are 3 of them. It's one of my icons. It was a visual midrash, custom paper cut for his bar mitzvah invitation, which is Sukkot.
That's so beautiful. Yeah. And that's the same one that Jason also had. Yeah. Same
Oh, I
person.
thought you this was first day, not Chol
No,
HaMoed.
it was Shabbat Chol HaMoed. Yeah.
No, I was the first day of Sukkot.
Oh, it was? It was the first day?
It was Shabbat. It was Sukkot day 1 that
You're right. It
happened to
was
fall on
Shabbat
Shabbat.
Sukkot day 1. It wasn't Shabbat Chol HaMoed. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so
it-
his parsha is a little different. It doesn't have, the God's attributes
Exactly,
and
you're
all
right.
those other
You're
things.
right. Yeah.
Yes.
All
Do
right.
you guys do this every week,
Shavua
Rabbi
Tov,
20?
everybody. What's that?
Do you do the learning every week?
We do the learning every week. We're here every week, every Saturday.
I have to advocate to bring my dad in one day or another.
Yeah, exactly. All right.
Okay, well, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see everybody.
Shavua Tov. Okay. Bye-bye. And have a good Yom Tov. Bye-bye.
Two. I mean, it takes a lot of questions, right? It's a very good question about when it changed. Like, when did HoloLens become like we can work? Right? Well, technically, there are a lot of halachos that are prohibited. I have to go back to the source to find out which one of the and we just changed that sign up there. Look at where it's missing. So now it's accurate.
going to use the bathroom. Don't let them lock me in. I have.
¿Tomaron café, verdad? ¿Ah? ¿Tomaron café, verdad? Qué idiota, no vio tu libro.